2020 was a terrible year for airlines. Can't imagine why.
9-year compounding at minus 18.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
It got me wondering, what's going on over there?
When they go bankrupt, the government bails them out. So are you buying Southwest?
Am I buying Southwest?
From flankinvesting.com, this is Money Grooves, the show for intelligent investors. I'm David. I've been an investor for over 10 years.
And I'm Elliot, and I'm starting to take my investing seriously. So, David, have you ever flown on Southwest Airlines?
Yeah, I used to all the time.
Okay. Yeah, same. I used to travel with them for business, and they were my go-to airline. Remember how you just kind of waited in line and you didn't have to pay any baggage fees?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's all going away. And today we're going to talk about why and whether or not that's a good move for Southwest.
Oh, cool. Let's get into it.
All right. Let's just start with a brief history of Southwest financials. So I'm kind of going to frame this around before the pandemic and after the pandemic, because we know that was a huge, 2020 was a terrible year for airlines. Can't imagine why. Yeah. But before the pandemic, Southwest was doing really well. They were consistently profitable. They had really lean operating costs, and they had a really strong loyalty base. Everybody loved Southwest. Sure, they didn't have some of the amenities that other airlines had. Their terminals were a little bit underfeatured compared to others. They didn't have classes like first class, but their customer service is great. They were reliable, and they had a lot of nice perks like no seat assignment and also free bags.
Yeah, and the ticket price was great too.
Right. They were a great airline. After the pandemic, though, they never really bounced back.
Yeah, if you look at the stock price, you can see that they just got smoked.
Yeah, they've never really bounced back after the pandemic, and so I saw recently that Southwest is introducing some new policies, and it got me interested as to why they're doing that. Let's take a look into Flank before we get into some of the reasons why they're having some of the struggles they are. So like you said, their stock price is the lowest it's been in a while. So if you look down at their financials, the first one that stuck out to me was that the revenue's been okay, right? But their net income is really not doing so great, especially after the pandemic. I mean, check out, we're barely scraping positive after the pandemic.
Yeah, but it's up 400% year on the 1 year level. That means they've corrected like the minor things,
which is great. They've definitely been doing some work over the last.
But 9-year compounding at minus 18.
Yeah,
holy crap.
They definitely have some work to do there, and same thing with return on invested capital. You'll see here that they're not doing so great here, and some of their other metrics are not doing great as well, like their free cash flow down here at the bottom. So it got me wondering, what's going on over there? Well, after the pandemic, some key things happened that really hurt their business. Their big competitors, United and Delta, namely, took their investments and turned them domestic because international travel didn't come back as fast as domestic did. Oh. So they were like, we got to make some money.
Oh, that was Southwest's key area.
Right. They started to invest heavily on the domestic and started to really, really come after Southwest core business. And what's really interesting, too, is Southwest had all these loyal fans, right? Had those loyal people. But Delta and United had loyal business travelers as well as people who had status. So they said, you know what? I had the chance now to take this airline that I love and that I have status with. I'm going to do that instead of Southwest. In addition to that domestic overcapacity, they also had some major operational hits starting in 2022 and kind of beyond.
Yeah, they had that big blackout, right?
Yeah,
I remember that without even looking it up at the store. Yeah, yep. It's huge.
The 2022 holiday outage, where they had thousands of flights canceled because of a critical software malfunction that led to crews not being scheduled correctly. They had to cancel a ton of flights. They had millions of people stranded right around the holiday season. Overall, that led to about $800 million in loss for them.
Whoa.
Huge loss for them. Also, they had some operational burden in that they were expecting a lot of new planes from Boeing, 737 MAX 7s. This was also in the news, if you remember, that they discovered that these planes had major structural issues, and so the delivery of those airplanes was delayed by over 5 years, meaning that Southwest not only wasn't expanding, they couldn't expand because they didn't have the aircraft to do it.
Yeah, and older aircraft break down more than newer aircraft. So you have an aging fleet, you have an IT outage. Yeah, it's been a rough time for Southwest. So are they turning around in your opinion?
So Southwest did some things to come back from that. They did a right sizing of their staff, which helped marginally, but really things have taken an upward swing when an activist investor called Elliott Management has come.
Elliott Management.
I know, right? Elliott Management, not affiliated. I wish I was. In 2024, an activist investor called Elliott Management took a majority stake in Southwest and decided to shake things up a little bit. They did a board shakeup, so they replaced a bunch of leadership at Southwest, and they also really put pressure on them to start capitalizing on the thing that they were missing most. The biggest key cause of Southwest decline, in my opinion, is their undercapitalization on ancillary revenues. This is high margin things like baggage fees, like legroom.
Oh, the reason why we hate airlines.
Exactly. The reason that we hate airlines.
Ugh.
Yeah, right. So they've been missing out on that for years, right? They didn't charge for any of this stuff. Assigned seats.
Yeah, and that what you just described is exactly what the activist investor playbook is. You come in, you gut the board, you install your people on there, and then you operationally gut, you mass layoffs, and then you try to find ways to increase revenue, right? It's what every consultant says. Increase revenue, decrease costs.
Yep,
exactly. It's literally all they do.
Exactly. So as you said, Elliott Management has come in with the activist investor playbook, and they've said, we need to capitalize on this revenue that you're missing out on. And so I did a little bit of research because I want to answer the question of, is this going to pay off for Southwest? And ultimately, is this a buy that we see swinging up in the future because of these changes?
Yeah, especially when you have Elliott when you have Elliott Management sitting on the board, they have investors, they have billions of dollars on the line. For this turnaround to take place. So yeah, great call out noticing that they're swimming in the water.
I should mention too that what we're going to talk about today is part of a larger strategy. If you are interested in learning more, I'll put a link and flank to the larger strategy where you can see some of the other changes that Elliott Management is planning, because this is just the beginning of what they want to do.
That's cool.
As you can see here, Southwest has shaken up their kind of class structure or their ticket structure to where there's now more of them and they have different benefits. So you've got your basic, choice preferred, and choice extra. In the past, our classes were centered around flexibility of the ticket. They were centered around boarding group, and they were centered around like a little perk, like a free drink if you did business select, which we all know and love. Now, though, they have these new 4 classes, and one of the key things that it includes now is all those things, but also seat assignment, which is the end of the cattle call. So what they're doing is they are just commoditizing every part of the flying experience, right? They're capitalizing on baggage fees, and they're capitalizing on legroom. Legroom is a really interesting thing, and especially from a business perspective, it's interesting because baggage fees seem like the obvious thing, right? And people will pay baggage fees. It's a great way. They've already done that. They found success with it. They found no burden. They found no reduction of checked bags. People will pay bag fees. But not everybody's checking a bag, but everybody cares about legroom.
Yeah.
So that is an even better thing to capitalize on. And so what I want to focus on is what other airlines have done and if it worked for them.
Yeah, cool.
The 2 airlines I chose to compare to Southwest were United Airlines and Delta Airlines. I chose United because United is kind of not a super premium airline, but it's like a utility airline, right? It's got a lot of the perks. They have classes, but it's not quite as premium as like a Emirates or like or Lufthansa or one of those, right? But then I also wanted to look at Delta because Delta is known for a little bit more premium experience. They have a stronger credit card relationship. It's just maybe a more premium airline, so I wanted to see how they compared as well. So looking at United Airlines, when did classes start? They added Economy Plus in 1999, so a long time ago, and they saw instant big success with it. They saw that people were buying it. They started making a lot of revenue off of it. So then years later, they added Premium Plus and they added Basic Economy. They added Premium Plus in 2018, and then before that, Basic Economy in 2017. These are all incremental upgrades, right? But fast forward to 2024, it worked huge. It was hugely successful. Basic Economy revenue was up 20% year over year, and premium sales were up 10%. In fact, United's executive team called Basic Economy a home run. And if you look at the economy revenue in 2024, it was up 20% year over year, like I said, and this was on top of a 50% jump the year before. What United said and what they found was that customers are willing to pay for a premium experience, and if you give it to them, they will buy it. So their bet paid off, right? They incrementally gave people the ability to do different things and the ability to pay for a premium experience, and they did.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yep.
So so I mean, you mentioned the aging fleet. The biggest source of revenue, maybe not the highest margin, but the biggest source of revenue is just straight up ticket fare
Right.
and like the volume of tickets.
Right.
And so if they're having a fleet problem, have there been any bad projections about that? And because you can try to upcharge people and upsell people all throughout the entire experience, but if you don't have the airplanes to do your core function.
Yeah.
So has that been a problem? Did that come across in your research at all?
So it didn't come up in my research. They certainly have had issues with their hardware, for lack of a better term, but I think they've solved a lot of that, and they're pretty good on their operational type stuff.
So are you buying Southwest?
After doing this research, I think it's really clear that this is a great bet. I think this is a great thing that Southwest is doing. The money is there, the history is there. My big question is going to be, is their customer base going to adopt? I think that's the biggest risk, is whether or not their customer base will adopt and actually buy this fare. They're already making money on baggage fees, which is great. I think that's going to help their bottom line. These extra tickets, I think people will certainly buy them because you got to fill the plane, right? So am I buying Southwest? I might consider it. I think I might consider it because I do think this is going to work. Southwest has a really strong brand reputation, and I really think that goes a long way. They've also invested in their flights. They've invested in their schedules. So I think they're doing good things. And I think this is a positive thing. And I will look more seriously at investing, I think. What do you think?
I would not touch an airline. And I'm not, so airlines, so Buffett has invested in airlines a lot of times, so much, and it's blown up in his face every time. And he's called himself an aeroholic. That's happened so many times. And here's why. When customers are buying like cereal or something, they will pay, 20, 30% margin for a brand.
Right.
They'll say, yeah, you know what? I will buy Fruit Loops as opposed to, Walmart Fruit Loops, right? But when it comes to airlines, there's just something about the human psychology where we just want to have the cheapest majority of customers, ignoring business travelers, ignoring even business travelers. I get hectored all the time by my in my day job for not having the cheapest ticket found. So people want the cheapest ticket ever, and then U.S. carriers fight incredibly hard. The competition is so intense among these among airlines that they chop away all of their margin, and so they just like we saw with Southwest, right? It's not uncommon for companies like this to run at a loss, and this is like good times. I'm sure if we look at some of the other companies, like you can see, during the 2020s, it makes sense that Delta had negative. But you can see like this airline business is just not good. I mean, these margins are pretty. If we look at the net profit margin, it's razor thin at 2%, and free cash flows all over the place. Yeah. So because an airline isn't able to kind of command that same brand power that you find in other consumer products, I typically stay away from airlines. But there definitely is a world in which if I saw this was trading at 1 times earnings or 2 times earnings, so I shouldn't say never. But I just, from reading Buffett, I know that, he called himself an aeroholic. They're valued commonly. They're, for people like me, hardcore value investors. Yeah, it's a lot of times that it becomes a value trap. And I would need a better growth story than, all right, we're just gonna shake people down more.
We're gonna commoditize everything.
That's gonna piss people. Like it could make more money, but nickel and diamond isn't really a growth story that gets me excited. Especially when we're talking about like a price to earnings ratio of 42 times earnings. That's really high for an airline.
I was shocked at how high Southwest was specifically, because United and Delta are not like that.
Yeah, I think it's because they're probably their net income is all over the place. So I'm guessing that, like if you compared their net income back in 2019, where it's around 2.3 billion, then that PE ratio would drop precipitously. Right. So I think it's because they're kind of in a recovery period, which means that because the market's pricing that in, because it's at a 42 times earnings, so the market's already pricing that it's going to have some reversion to the mean. But I'm sure as you do more research, the answer will become more and more clear.
I'm going to track it too, because the last thing that's interesting to me about airlines is that it's almost like a utility, right? You mentioned that they don't have like the brand power that some of these like CPGs do, consumer packaged goods, right? Like airlines are here to stay. People have to fly. Like you've got to fly to get places. So it's an interesting business because some of the businesses we look at are not strictly necessary. I feel that airlines are necessary, and so their growth model and what they can do and how they can stay in business is different than some of the things we've looked at and talked a lot about.
And as they're competing, like because the competition's so like it's common that they'll go years running in the red,
right.
And then because when they go bankrupt, the government bails them out.
So yeah, I think what we established today was this is a watch. Certainly, it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out for Southwest. I'm optimistic because I like the brand. I think they've done good things, but it's stiff competition, and it's also the commoditization of everything. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, awesome. That's all for this one. Thanks so much for watching. We actually made a video a long time ago on airlines, and that was when Carl Icahn took a position in an airline company. So you'll see that video floating somewhere around my head right now if you want to check it out. We got a lot better at making videos since then. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.